That's how cholesterol gets into the bloodstream. After we eat a meal, the food is broken down into proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Your liver takes these food molecules and makes approximately 80% of the cholesterol in your body.
Only about 10 to 20% of the cholesterol in our body actually comes from us eating ready-made cholesterol, which must come from another animal, because only animals know how to make cholesterol. Once it is manufactured in the liver, it is now packaged together with the other major fat in our body called triglyceride and sent out through the bloodstream. They're packaged together and kept through the blood, which is essentially water. In order to do this, the body has to find some form of transport system.
The body's transport system is something called a lipoprotein. Lipoproteins have a protein shell, and they carry lipid, the medical term for cholesterol and triglyceride. It's the body's version of an oil tanker. Shortly after a meal, one of these tankers, called a very low-density lipoprotein, or VLDL, leaves the liver, carrying its cargo to the fat cells, where most of the triglyceride is unloaded. What's left after this process is a smaller tanker called simply a low-density lipoprotein. The job of this low-density lipoprotein, or LDL, is to transport cholesterol to cells and organs around the body, where it will be used as a building block in the cell walls, and to make important substances such as estrogen and testosterone. But these tankers can also lead to trouble.
Either there's too much being produced by the liver so that the cells cannot unload these lipoproteins quick enough, or there are problems at the various cells. You will get a buildup of VLDL or LDL in the bloodstream, which will cause you, when you go to the doctor, to have a high cholesterol test or a high triglyceride test. And this then can lead to breakdown of these sort of tankers, these lipoproteins. The cholesterol then accumulates in the wall of the artery and will lead to heart disease.
Researchers have discovered that not all plaques lining the arteries are the same. Some plaques can narrow the artery substantially, yet be relatively stable. Others create a smaller blockage, but are more unstable. Recent research shows the smaller, more unstable plaques tend to be full of fat and more vulnerable to inflammation.
Some atherosclerotic plaque is more likely to break open and cause a clot to form.
Blood clots seen here in this cardiac catheterization are what actually lead to heart attacks by completely blocking the flow of blood to parts of the heart. If the arterial blockage has progressed too far, a procedure called angioplasty may be necessary. In this procedure, doctors guide a balloon to the site of the blockage, then inflate the balloon, which forces apart the blockage. If the angioplasty doesn't work, or too many arteries are blocked, bypass surgery may be necessary. It bypasses a blockage by using veins or arteries from other parts of the body, or synthetic grafts, to connect vessels above the blockage with vessels below.
However, one should always remember that these procedures are only temporary. You're not to prevent further blockages from occurring in the newly implanted vessels or in the vessels that are remaining there.
Because LDL is the cholesterol that forms plaque in the arteries, it's become known as the bad cholesterol. Fortunately, the body also has a type of salvage tanker called HDL.
This HDL, or high-density lipoprotein, is considered the so-called good cholesterol because the more you have in your bloodstream, theoretically, the more you can remove from the walls of the artery where it may have accumulated and clear it from those arteries, preventing the accumulation and blocking those arteries.
The HDL loads up with accumulated cholesterol and takes it back to the liver, where it's recycled or cleared from your body.
Mary, it looks like you're doing very nicely indeed.
With the help of Dr. Stein, proper medication, and a healthy diet, Mary Reese has had her cholesterol under optimal control for many years and has had no further blockages.
Here it is 10 years later, and I'm still alive, I'm still kicking, and I feel like I'm going to go on for a long time.
Healthy Body, Healthy Mind is produced by Information Television Network, global leaders in health and wellness programming, because information is powerful medicine. Visit us on the web at healthybodyhealthymind.com.
This is my candle shop. I love scented candles.
That in the United States, there is no greater killer than heart disease.
So if you take cancers, if you take AIDS, if you take motor car accidents, if infectious diseases, and you add them all together, they still come to less than the number of people who will die every year from heart disease.
Some of the factors that contribute to the high incidence of heart disease include being male, growing older, high blood pressure, smoking, and diabetes. Doctors also believe personal lifestyle can play a major role. Smoke, don't exercise, and consume a diet high in calories and fat, you're asking for trouble. Eat too much fat, especially saturated fat, and the liver produces more cholesterol, and your arteries are more likely to be lined with plaque. But as we mentioned earlier, diet is not the only cause of high cholesterol.
Every doctor I went to, they would say, it's your diet, it's your diet. I would go from dietitian to dietitian, and nothing seemed to help.
Geraldine Reed was in trouble. A good cholesterol level is under 200. More than 240 is considered high. Geraldine's cholesterol had risen to 5, and her triglycerides to more than 2,000.
And then my local paper had an article on inherited cholesterol. We had a number to call in Utah. And I called the number, and they sent me some information, and the closest doctor was Dr. Stein. And that's how I met Dr. Stein. And he put me on some medicine, and in a month's time, my cholesterol and triglycerides had just about gone to normal.
1 in 500 Americans suffers from inherited cholesterol problems.
There are about 500,000 Americans walking around carrying this gene, which will, in more than half of them, lead to heart disease by about age 50. And many of them presenting with heart disease in their 20s or 30s.
As a child, I had problems. My mother always take me back and forth to the doctor because I had it started with a lot of stomach problems, gastric problems, foods that I would eat.
Lenora Salter, her daughter Cheryl Johnson, and Cheryl's son Larry all share the gene that causes high cholesterol. Cheryl had a cholesterol level of 400 when she was still in elementary school. She was aware of this, but didn't follow her treatment program and started smoking. She didn't have any major problems at first, but years of untreated high cholesterol finally took their toll at age 37.
I was noticing that if I was rushing or getting real excited, I would get real short of breath, and it was like my chest would just start hurting real bad. It was just like a burning sensation.
Cheryl's doctor diagnosed blocked coronary arteries and performed heart bypass surgery. Now Cheryl is worried about her 11-year-old son Larry. At age 7, Larry's cholesterol level was near 500.
I just hope that, I can keep him taking his medicine and exercising, eating the right food. Hopefully, he won't have to go through all that.
Heart disease is not the only illness associated with high cholesterol and plaque-lined arteries.
Atherosclerosis is actually a very widespread disease in the body. It affects other circulations, not just the heart. Stroke, which can leave people unable to speak, unable to care for themselves, unable to move parts of their body, is often due to atherosclerosis.
Men start out having the greatest risk of atherosclerosis and the problems that go with it. But that changes as men and women age.
It's after menopause, where the protective effect of estrogens appears to have worn off by age 65. Women have the most rapidly rising rate of heart disease. And in fact, by age 75, they've caught up to men.
Hospitals, doctors' offices, and public health departments offer cholesterol screening clinics at little or no cost. Doctors recommend anyone with a family history of high cholesterol or heart disease have a cholesterol check at age 2. Everyone else should have their cholesterol levels checked at age 20. If the first test is not optimal, cholesterol levels should be checked more frequently. Doctors are getting better at treating high cholesterol, and you can help lower your risk. We'll talk more about prevention and treatment when we come back.
Now you can share the laughs with America's favorite family.
So many pastry, I'm dreaming. This is great.
Growing Pains. Weeknights at 7, 6 Central on I.
Taking medicine from Dr. Stein's medicine cabinet called niacin, and I've been taking that for about 6 or 8 years, and it does a very good job.
Niacin is a vitamin in small doses, but in very large doses, it's an effective way to raise the level of HDL and reduce the level of LDL and VLDL. There are side effects such as flushing of the skin, burning sensation, and reddening of the skin. But when given under the proper supervision, the side effects become tolerable to the patient. On the other hand, side effects from the latest generation of medications called the statins, which mainly reduce LDL cholesterol, are rare. Recent evidence from work with the statins proves aggressive treatment of cholesterol helps patients without hurting them, as some doctors once feared. It appears cholesterol medications such as the statins work not only by reducing LDL cholesterol, but also by altering the nature of the plaque lining of patients' arteries.
We now believe that we can convert the kind of unstable or vulnerable plaque, the one that's more likely to break open and cause a blood clot, into one that is more stable, that will resist breakage and be less likely to cause a heart attack and stroke.
There are two other commonly used treatments. Fibrates mainly lower triglyceride by speeding up the offloading of VLDL by the fat cells. Resins work in the intestinal tract like a superfiber. Resins have been used for over 30 years and are very safe.
It doesn't get into the bloodstream at all. It only works by binding bile, one of the major byproducts of cholesterol, and taking it out of the body, thereby causing the body to break down cholesterol, especially LDL, to make more bile to replace what is lost in the intestinal tract.
Ultimately, patients must take care of themselves to keep their cholesterol under control. That means stopping smoking, exercising, and watching their diet.
I tried to really follow the diet very strictly, but I fall off sometimes, and I'll buy a bag of candy and just eat. But then I have to get back on track and do it again, start over again.
Since I've had my surgery, I try not to eat anything that has fat in it. I look at all the labels and I try to buy basically things that are fat-free.
The first step on the road to good health is to learn your cholesterol level by having a simple blood test done.
My family has a long history of heart disease. My father and his brothers all died relatively young of heart attacks.
Gail Luce found out he had high cholesterol when he was tested at age 29. Knowing his problem so that he can deal with it has helped Gail stay alive. He takes one of the statin drugs, plus a resin. He exercises and watches his diet.
I know that I have to be careful all the time. You can't let up. You have to watch your diet all the time.
It looks like he's doing well with his current medication.
My outlook on life now is much different than it was at one time because I can breathe much better, much deeper. I can climb steps without getting exhausted. I can run and jog if I choose to, and that feels great.
My girlfriend and I were talking about osteoporosis, and she told me she has to set aside time one morning every week to take her osteoporosis pill. I said, I take once monthly Boniva. It fits my routine. And she said, that I can do. Boniva helps build strong, healthy bones to prevent fractures with just one pill a month. With all I do for bone health, Boniva fits right in. Unlike weekly treatments, I only need Boniva once a month. No wonder
Join us for Eye Health Saturday nights, 8, 7 Central on Eye, or go to eyeonhealth.tv for more information.
I'm Anne, and I'm a GSK scientist. I just started Alzheimer's research when my grandmother was diagnosed. I wanted to hurry up and find a cure. We started working on ideas that no one else had tried. Maybe people don't think we try hard enough, but we believe we'll find the answers. And we're getting closer. What I see in the lab is very exciting. What I see at last is hope.
GlaxoSmithKline. Today's medicines. Finance tomorrow's miracles.
2 women, each frustrated with a tough cleaning problem, until the day Mr. Clean Extra Power arrived. It out-cleans caked on grease and stubborn rust. For more information on Mr. Clean Extra Power, go to MrClean.com. Public health groups are fighting to overcome what is known as the treatment gap. This is the gap between strong evidence that lowering cholesterol will prevent heart disease and the lack of doctors treating high cholesterol or patients not following that treatment.
There are also people who know that they have high cholesterol, who have been started on medications, and for some reason or other don't continue those medications.
Dr. Stein also suspects some doctors may not understand the guidelines for treating patients with high cholesterol.
And there seems to be a gap from what doctors know about cholesterol and reducing cholesterol levels and preventing heart disease and the actual practice of medicine.
Tremendous advances have been made in understanding and treating the problems of high cholesterol. The National Institutes of Health's National Cholesterol Education Program sets guidelines for when treatment should be started and the goals of treatment.
The NCEP2 guidelines are very helpful in establishing goals for treatment in cholesterol. And they're based really on risk for whether or not disease. If you have one or less risk factor, your LDL ought to be under 160. If you have 2 or more risk factors, the LDL ought to be under 130. If you have disease, if you've had a heart attack, or if you've had bypass surgery or angioplasty, that LDL needs to be under 100. The way we determine risk if disease is not present is based on looking at several risk factors and adding up the points. For men, you're at risk over the age of 45, and a male relative before 55 is an additional point. For a woman, you're at risk at 55, or when you go through the menopause, and a female relative with an event under the age of 65 would be an additional point. Smoking is a point. Smoking cigarettes, that would get you another point. High blood pressure would get you a point. Diabetes would get you a point, or an HDL cholesterol less than 35.
Some questions still being debated are, at what age and what cholesterol level should treatment begin? How far should doctors go in lowering cholesterol levels? And how much cost should our society be willing to bear in order to save lives?
Because many studies have shown that even at moderately elevated cholesterol levels, in people at low risk for heart disease, very few risk factors, we will still reduce their risk of heart disease by lowering their LDL cholesterol.
With physicians treating patients according to the latest advances, the future of cholesterol treatment for preventing heart disease looks bright. But patients must also take care of themselves by taking their cholesterol medications and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Lenora Salter is glad her daughter Cheryl now pays attention to her cholesterol level, because that means she knows what's wrong with her and how to take care of it.
Just enjoy your life. Each day should mean something to you. If your family has cholesterol problems, that you get it checked, because if you have inherited cholesterol, you can die at the very early age of 28 or 30, and they won't diagnose your problem until you're already dead.
I think continued emphasis on the public health aspects throughout society, coupled with the use of these medications, is going to make a difference. We can win this battle with heart disease if we apply what we know.
That concludes this edition of the Cutting Edge Medical Report. We'd like to thank all those who helped make this program possible.